All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our RBT practice question series, where we continue with our next set of questions as we break them down together. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shoutout. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. After collecting a week's worth of data, it is determined that the client responded 15 out of a possible 31 times. The behavior technician who collected the data writes down 48% for the week. What type of measurement does this most likely describe? So we have a measurement question. And when we're trying to determine what measurement was used, we want to first look at the data that were collected. The data are going to point us in the right direction as far as measurement goes. So we know the technician collected a week's worth of data, and ultimately they recorded 48% for the week. Now, how do they get 48%? Well, they recorded 15 out of a possible 31 times. So immediately we should think, all right, we're looking at a percentage for the behavior or percentage of the time that the behavior happened. What measurement do we use where ultimately we land on a percentage? A, rate. Rate isn't going to give us a percentage. Rate is going to give us a frequency per a time. So in this case, we might get 15 per week if we were looking at the rate, but we're not going to get the 48% by calculating the rate. What about B, percentage of occurrence? Now, pretty obvious, right? Because it's in the name. Percentage of occurrence is also called percentage of opportunities, and it's essentially looking at how often does something occur given the number of opportunities. In this case, there were 31 opportunities. The behavior happened 15 times. So the percentage of occurrence or the percentage of opportunities was 48%. That's what the behavior technician ultimately calculated after collecting all the data. What about C, duration? Duration looks at the length of time of a response, and our final calculation wasn't time. It was a percentage. And then D, trials to criterion. With trials to criterion, what we do is we set a goal or we set a criterion that a learner must achieve to reach mastery. In other words, we might say the learner needs to record 3 responses in a row correct to reach mastery. Their trials to criterion would then be how long does it take them to get 3 in a row. Not what we measured here. What we measured here was the percentage of occurrence based on the number of opportunities. And ultimately, that came out to 48% for the week. Tina knows that Lauren's favorite hobby is painting model airplanes. How might Tina use the pre-map principle to get Lauren to do all of her chores? All right, so we're looking at Tina's behavior, okay, because we want Tina to use the pre-map principle to get Lauren to do all of her chores. So let's start with what is a pre-map principle. This is why fluency is so important. If you don't know what the pre-map principle is, this is going to be a very challenging question. The pre-map principle says the learner gets to engage in a preferred response as reinforcement for engaging in a less than preferred response. So if Tina knows that Lauren's favorite hobby is painting model airplanes, well then Tina, when using the pre-map principle, should let Lauren engage in painting airplanes after she's engaged in a lower preferred response. So let's look at A. Allow Lauren to paint model airplanes for an hour, but then have her do her chores for 30 minutes. Well, this isn't how the contingency works because in A, Lauren gets to engage in her preferred activity first. And that's not what the pre-map principle says. A has the pre-map principle reversed. B, tell Lauren that if she completes all her chores, then she will give her $10. B is a contingency where Lauren is earning something for engaging in a behavior, but we're looking at the pre-map principle, which is going to use a preferred activity or response. And in this case, it's painting model airplanes. So B is a contingency. It's just not necessarily using the pre-map principle. C, tell Lauren that if she completes all her chores, then she can paint airplanes for the rest of the day. C is a much better answer than B because it's using the known preferred activity for Lauren as the consequence. And then D, tell Lauren to clap, say her name, and ask her to do all of her chores. Now, what does D most resemble? To me, it looks like a high probability request sequence. We would want to know more information, but when we are asking someone to do some easier tasks, right? Some high probability tasks. We follow it by a low probability task, really considered or usually considered a high P request sequence. In this case, how would Tina use the pre-mac principle to get Lauren to do all of her chores? Well, she's going to give Lauren the opportunity to paint model airplanes if she first completes the chores. Consider the following behavior definition. Grayson will frequently stand up from his chair and either run outside of the classroom or crawl under the table. This behavior typically happens 3 to 5 times per hour. The behavior looks like Grayson getting up from his seat completely and moving at least 5 feet away from his area. What is not included in this definition? So we have a behavior definition question. Good behavior definitions are complete, they're clear, and they describe exactly what is going on so anybody reading the definition can understand what they're looking for. The more information in a definition, the better. Now, we're going to look at the following behavior definition and try to figure out what isn't included. Grayson frequently stands up from his chair, runs outside of the classroom, and crawls under the table. So this looks like a brief description of what the behavior is. We then have the behavior typically happens 3 to 5 times per hour. So we've got a rate, we've got a measurement, and then we have the behavior looks like Grayson getting up from his seat completely and moving at least 5 feet away from his area. This is a topography. So far we've got a brief description of what the behavior is. We've got a measurement, and then we have a topography. What are we missing? A measurement. We just covered we have a rate 3 to 5 times per hour. This is a loose measurement of the behavior. B, the topography. We have a pretty good topography. Grayson gets up from his seat completely and moves at least 5 feet away from his area. A pretty good description of what the behavior looks like, which is the topography. So what about C, the function? Is there a function in this definition? Do we know why the behavior is occurring? We don't. This behavior could be happening for any number of reasons. Attention, escape, tangible. We're not sure. So what this definition is missing is a function. And a function is very important in a behavior definition because behavior can have similar topographies, it can look the same, and it can function for very, very different reasons. So if we truly want this definition to be strong as it can be, and where multiple people can look at that definition and know what we're looking for, we need to include why the behavior is happening, which would be C, the function. Your supervising behavior analyst tells you that they want you to start fading out your client's reinforcement schedule. What are some possible ways we can fade the schedule? What do we mean when we talk about fading a schedule? Fading a schedule, also known as thinning a schedule, is when we make it harder to gain reinforcement, or we change the reinforcement delivery in some way, maybe the magnitude, maybe how it's delivered. And what's the point of that? Well, the point is to encourage maintenance and generalization because it's very rare that someone's going to receive reinforcement in the natural environment as often as they do in the teaching environment. So to make things as close to the natural environment as possible, we want to reduce the amount of contrived reinforcement. We do this by fading. So if your behavior analyst tells you they want you to fade out your client's schedule, their reinforcement schedule, what are some possible ways you could engage in fading? A, increase the response requirement to earn reinforcement. Sure, if you increase how many responses it takes to gain reinforcement, you've essentially faded it. You've made it more difficult to gain that reinforcement. More responses are required. B, reduce the amount of reinforcement earned each time reinforcement is given. So now, instead of maybe getting 20 M&Ms, we give them 10. We are reducing the magnitude of that reinforcement, therefore fading out the reinforcement. C, increase the time that must pass before reinforcement can be earned. So instead of dealing with the responses, maybe a ratio schedule, we're now dealing with an interval schedule in C. You're increasing how much time must pass before reinforcement can be earned. For example, maybe before, every 5 minutes reinforcement was available, and now every 10 minutes reinforcement is available. The client must wait longer and longer to actually be able to gain reinforcement. So ultimately, possible ways to fade a schedule: increase response requirement, reduce the magnitude of reinforcement, or increase the time that must pass before reinforcement can be earned. You, a behavior technician, received training last week on a new behavior plan, treating behavior functioning for a tangible. When you arrive at session today, you completely forget the function and the intervention. What is the first thing you should do? Now, it's very important. First thing you should do as a technician. There are many steps you might take. What is the first thing you should do? Because you're the technician, you were trained last week on this plan, and then you get to session and you forget. Now, it happens, right? Everybody goes through this at one point or the other where you forget what you're supposed to be doing. The worst thing we can do in this situation is pretend like you know and go in and try to implement something you don't necessarily understand. We cannot do that because that puts the client at risk. So if you're in the situation where you're at session already, what should you do first? A, attempt to implement the intervention to the best of your ability. We definitely should not do that because you're implementing something you don't quite understand. It could be wrong. It's putting the client at risk, which we cannot do. B, cancel session until you can figure out what it is you're supposed to be doing. Well, you're already at session, and so there must be steps to take before we go as far as canceling. Each session is very valuable to our clients, so we want to maximize them as much as possible. C, read through the treatment plan and behavior plan and contact your supervisor if you still aren't sure. Yes, this is number one. Right? We have to understand our treatment plan, we have to understand our behavior plan, and these documents should be available to you. Since you're already trained, you should be able to read these plans and go through them and understand what you're supposed to be doing. If you still don't, then you contact your supervisor. If you still can't get in touch with them, then we move to other options. D, wait until after session to contact your supervisor and only implement what you know. Well, you only want to implement what you know, but you don't want to wait until after session because you've just went 3 full hours. First thing you need to do, review notes, review session notes, review the plan, and then immediately contact your supervisor if you still aren't sure. If you've done everything in C and you still don't know, then and only then should we move to other options. Thank you for watching. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Make sure you like and subscribe for all of our updates. We also have BCBA materials available now, so be sure to check those out on our channel. As always, work hard, study hard, and we'll see you soon.